Barbadians to go to the polls in just under a month. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Thursday, April 26th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Just over 1 month and a half after the automatic dissolution of Barbados Parliament without an election date named, Prime Minister Frundell Stewart has finally told citizens that they will vote for a new government on May 24th. Nomination day is set for May 7th. The announcement came not at a political rally or public engagement, but in a two-line statement released by the Government Information Service on Thursday morning. In it, Stewart said he had officially notified Governor General Dame Sandra Mason of the election and nomination dates. He had come under fire for his delay in announcing the election date. It was the first time in Barbados' political history that Parliament was allowed to die a natural death before an election date was set. Leader of the opposition Barbados Labour Party, Mia Motley, had made repeated calls for the Prime Minister to ring the election bell. She recently issued an open letter to Stewart saying that the country was crumbling and grinding to a halt because of the delay in calling the elections. The polls are expected to be contested by at least 7 political parties, including the ruling Democratic Labour Party, the main opposition BLP, and 5 fledgling parties. Meanwhile, the opposition leader has described the timing of the election as a royal fumble. Motley, who is looking to become Barbados' first female prime minister, says although the announcement was a light at the end of the tunnel, the date would pose logistical nightmares since schools, which are mostly used as polling stations, are in examination mode.
There will, of course, be some anxiety on the part of parents and on the part of some of the children, and indeed some of the young people who are taking exams, as some of them are also first-time voters. They will have to navigate 2 serious decisions in short order.
A video statement issued just hours after the announcement of the date, Motley called on Prime Minister Stewart to explain to the electorate what measures will be put in place to mitigate the anticipated challenges.
Those who claim that this is the result of some grand strategy really need to appreciate that this is nothing more than a royal fumble. We look forward, therefore, to hearing in the near future what arrangements will be put in place so that we ourselves can plan for the respective date.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has stoutly defended his country's decision to repatriate 82 Venezuelans last weekend, and he says he will write a letter of complaint to the United Nations about how the country is being labeled. Persons close to the United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, have accused the country of violating international law. But in a media brief on Thursday, Rowley said his country is governed by laws, and while the people are generous and caring, he will not sit idly by and allow any person or organization to misrepresent the truth. He said he will address the matter at the highest level.
And it's against that background that we will not allow persons for one reason or the other to paint us in any other color, and we will not allow, without protest, public servants from any international agency to misrepresent our circumstance to the world and stay in Trinidad and Tobago. Against that background, I, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, will, under my hand, write a complaint to the United Nations at its headquarters about the conduct of persons who take it upon themselves to speak about Trinidad and Tobago. We are a member of the United Nations, and a very, very careful and responsible one. And if officers of the UN are going to talk about Trinidad and Tobago, especially those who are in Trinidad and Tobago and know our circumstance, then the least we can expect of them is to stay with the facts with respect to Trinidad and Tobago.
Rowley said he does not dispute that some of the deportees were asylum seekers, but insists that the country's position has been misrepresented in the international arena.
What we have here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have difficulties in a neighboring state. There are people from that state who have difficulties at home, and as I said earlier on, we are a generous and caring people. We have arrangements which allow Venezuelans to come to Trinidad and Tobago, to stay for a short while, return to Venezuela, obtain supplies if they have to, and so on. That is what has been going on. As the situation in Venezuela deteriorated, more and more persons were coming, and we were in fact assisting as we are able to. Bear in mind, we are not China, we're not Russia, we're not America, we are a little island, limited space, 1.3 million people, and therefore we cannot and will not allow the UN spokespersons to convert us into a refugee camp. Our relationship with Venezuela is one of mutual friendship and assistance, and it's against that background why we have been keeping our doors open.
Meantime, the Venezuelan parliament says it wants answers about the deportations. And as the fallout continues, a former national security minister is proposing a solution to the Twin Island Republic's Venezuela migrant problem. CNC3's Kamal Georges has that story.
2 days after 82 of its nationals were returned home, the Venezuelan parliament wants answers. Several South American news outlets have reported that the legislature, which is controlled by the opposition, will seek explanations from this country about the repatriation of citizens. According to one of the articles, the opposition's deputy Carlos Valero states their intention to request from the embassy in Caracas a formal meeting with the government of this country. The move to repatriate the citizens has been criticized by the United Nations Agency for Refugees, Amnesty International, and others. The Trinidad and Tobago government has indicated that all nationals returned voluntarily, even those who had sought asylum, something local human rights organizations challenged. Valero criticized Venezuela's ambassador to this country, Coromoto Godoy, saying she coordinated and directed the operation against Venezuelans, something he says cannot go unpunished. He asked the international community for solidarity and consideration. Meanwhile, a former national security minister says the key to solving this country's large illegal immigrant population is to grant those already here a 6-month amnesty. During that period, he says they should register at the immigration office, where they will be granted a work permit and then allowed to pay taxes. Gary Griffith says this was proposed to Cabinet 3 years ago during the People's Partnership administration. He says the thinking behind it was that there were already 120,000 illegal immigrants in this country using services without paying taxes.
What should be done is a moratorium, which is what I had drafted, for the majority of those persons who have resided here, employers who know that they need them, and then with that, this 100,000 plus can now pay taxes. It will reduce human trafficking. It will stop employers from abusing employees through atrocious working conditions. It will inject over 2 billion TT into the economy. That is how you deal with it.
Member of Parliament for Barbuda, Trevor Walker, has hinted that a repeal of the 2007 Barbuda Land Act could trigger fresh moves by the sister isle to pursue independence from Antigua. He issued the warning ahead of debate on Parliament. That's in Parliament on Wednesday on the Crown Lands Regulations Amendment Act 2018, which would change the decades-old system of communal ownership on Barbuda. Janor Smith of ABS News reports.
Land rights are human rights. The MP for the Island constituency resolute on Wednesday as he prepared for the debate in the lower house.
The bill basically stripped Barbudans of the communal rights that we've enjoyed for over 300 years and give the cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda right to decide what happens in Barbuda. We're going to stand up against that and we're going to fight that.
These latest comments came on the heels of his protests in London when he joined other Barbudans who protested outside the venue where the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting was taking place. I asked Mr. Walker what would be his next action if the bill is passed.
We're going to challenge it in court right away. right away, because we'll allow the court to deem that bill unconstitutional. We're looking at all the options.
One of those options, according to Mr. Walker, is a secession from Antigua.
Well, responding to the talk of secession in Parliament, Prime Minister Gaston Brown said Barbuda cannot stand alone.
Ask yourselves whether or not you could survive without Antigua. The reality is you cannot. Barbuda, in its present form, is inviable. Now, my government has shown commitment, and we're saying here that there's an opportunity now for us to develop Barbuda and to help the Barbudans to become, if not independent, at least close to being independent. We don't have any petrol, we don't have any diamond, no gold, no bauxite. Tourism is an option that is available. And in any country, in order to advance, you must have a developed property rights system. You can't bring this system that existed several hundred years ago into the 21st century and expect to advance.
Still to come in Carrier Newsline, the private criminal charges filed against government ministers in Guyana are discontinued. The details when we return.
Festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again. The Caribbean's greatest summer line, yeah, it's country around my time. 44 is me here, I know you love it here. Troops and festivities, we love the Caribbean. But all night, no time to sleep, emancipate with we.
Watching on May 12th as the Anthony N. Sapka Caribbean Awards for Excellence is broadcast live from the Pegasus Hotel in Jamaica. Join us from 6:30 p.m. as Kai Miller of Jamaica, Noel and Siobhan Joseph of Trinidad and Tobago, Andrew Boyle of Guyana, and Adesh Ramsubak of Trinidad and Tobago receive $500,000 TT, a medal and citation for their work in the arts, sciences, public and civic contributions, and entrepreneurship.
Follow your heart to the 22nd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival from June 27 to July 1st, 2018. Featuring Kester Band, Singer Lungi, Small X Band, Nyla Blackman, and Betty Watt. Also, Patti LaBelle, Dijon, New Vibes International, Rhythm of the Beat, and Wayne Wonder. Vibes, August Alsina, Aishona, Byron Messiah, Dasha, Shaka Dimas, and Pliers, and Miss Lauren Hill. Save the date and book now for the 22nd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival, an experience like no other.
Guyana's Director of Public Prosecutions has discontinued the most recent private criminal charges filed by opposition Member of Parliament Anil Nandlal against 3 sitting government ministers. Attorney General Basil Williams confirmed Thursday afternoon that the charges against Ministers Winston Jordan, Rupert Roopnaraine and David Patterson have been dropped. The opposition People's Progressive Party had brought charges of misconduct in public office against a total of 5 government ministers. The first set of charges against Minister Valda Lawrence and Dr. George Norton were dropped on Monday. The last statement from the DPP's chambers says the charges were discontinued because such allegations ought first to have been reported to the Guyana Police Force for an investigation to be launched, and the advice of the DPP sought. Minister of State Joseph Harmon says if PPP officials continue to file frivolous charges against government officials, they may be made to foot big bills for damages. We get more in this report from Royden James of HGP Nightly News.
The drama all started when the DPP recommended that former Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh and former head of NISIL Winston Brassington be charged for misconduct in public office. There is a warning from Minister of State Joseph Harmon about the filing of those private criminal charges against government ministers.
And I do believe and I do trust that at the appointed time when these matters are heard, and as far as I know, based on what I'm seeing, when they're determined that Mr. Nandalal and the persons who bring these frivolous charges will be condemned significantly in costs and damages.
Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu has also denounced the actions of the PPP officials as a mockery of the court system. Mr. Harman shares the same sentiments.
You know, in the law they call them court busybodies. Mr. Nandalal is becoming a busybody, and I trust that he takes his time to understand the nature of these matters that he's filing.
Attorney General Basil Williams has also warned the PPP about the likelihood of a plethora of private charges with substance against PPP officials if they don't have anything of substance to take before the courts.
The DPP has been asked by the PPP CMP Nandlal to reconsider her charges against Singh and Brassington, and the government would expect no lesser treatment for the charges she did not institute, lest the floodgates open to create a festival of private criminal charges, even against the leader of the opposition.
Opposition leader Bara Jagdeo said last week that the charges were brought against the government ministers after his party raised concerns repeatedly about corruption in government, and no one seemed to be listening.
The manager of St. Vincent and the Grenadines radio station Nice Radio has apologized to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves for comments a caller made to the station last month as Gonsalves threatened a lawsuit. Douglas De Freitas offered the apology, which he said he will also give in writing, although saying he has not yet spoken with his lawyers on the matter. His apology came less than 24 hours after the Prime Minister threatened to pursue legal action. Gonsalves, speaking Tuesday night on Star Radio, which is owned by his Unity Labour Party, said he had sent the recording of the offending comments on Nice Radio and a transcript to his lawyers. Someone residing in North America had made the call during New Times, the daily mid-morning program of the main opposition New Democratic Party. De Freitas, who is a cousin of the Prime Minister, said he was very disturbed and upset about the development, noting that it occurred when he was overseas for medical attention. Nice Radio has previously been sued by Prime Minister Gonsalves on several occasions. And ahead in Newsline Sport, the West Indies captain says upcoming ODIs will build team confidence leading up to the 2019 World Cup. Stay with us. Sport is next.
Relax, enjoy the view, the boats, the scenery amidst epic parties, entertainment and nightlife. Antigua Sailing Week. Experience 7 days of non-stop bliss. Chase the race daily by land or up close by sea as the crews compete for glory. Then, when night falls, the harbor ignites. Antigua Sailing Week, April 28th to May 4th, 2018. Antigua and Barbuda. The beach is just the beginning.
Be watching on May 12th as the Anthony N. Sapka Caribbean Awards for Excellence is broadcast live from the Pegasus Hotel in Jamaica. Join us from 6:30 p.m. as Kai Miller of Jamaica, Noel and Siobhan Joseph of Trinidad and Tobago, Andrew Boyle of Guyana, and Adesh Ramsubag of Trinidad and Tobago receive $500,000 TT, a medal and citation for their work in the arts, sciences, public and civic contributions, and entrepreneurship.
Festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again. The Caribbean's greatest summer line, yeah, it's country around the time. 44 years we here, I know you love it here. Troops and festivities, we
West Indies captain Jason Holder has underscored the importance of the several one-day series leading up to next year's World Cup in England. He says it's vital for the Caribbean side to use them to gain confidence, momentum and a settled lineup for the global showpiece. In preparation for the May 30th to July 14th event in England and Wales, the Windies will play home and away ODI series against Bangladesh later this year and tour India for another 5 matches before hosting England early next year. While the Windies' participation in the qualifying tournament, which involves the likes of Nepal, Hong Kong and Papua New Guinea, was widely regarded as somewhat belittling for the two-time former World Cup winners, Holder said it had been a blessing in disguise. He said, and I quote, "Playing in the World Cup qualifiers was not all bad in a way. I think it was an opportunity to come together as a side, get some wins under our belt, play some of the associate nations and some of the nations which qualified as full member nations." End of quote. The Caribbean side missed out on automatic qualification but secured one of the 2 spots up for grabs by finishing second in a 10-team qualifying tournament in Zimbabwe last month. And Test all-rounder Raymond Reefer and West Indies limited over speedster Kimo Paul are among 10 players named by Cricket West Indies to be part of a fast bowling camp starting in Antigua next month. The 26-year-old Reefer played his lone test in New Zealand last December, while Paul, who only turned 20 in February, burst onto the scene this year and has since played 4 one-day internationals and 3 T20s. The two will be joined by Odean Smith, who made his international debut in the historic T20 series against Pakistan earlier this month. West Indies A-star Keon Joseph, Dominic Drakes and Chamar Holder, Sherman Lewis, Jeremiah Lewis and Romario Shepherd and O'Shane Thomas have all been included. Director of Cricket Jimmy Adams said the move was part of a CWI's strategy of targeting emerging players and showing their continued development and preparing them for selection to the West Indies senior teams. The month-long camp will be staged at Coolidge Cricket Ground and will be conducted by high-performance director Richard Pybus and Windies under-19 head coach Graham West, along with former senior team bowling consultants Roddy Eswick and Sir Curtly Ambrose. Switching sports now, Bermuda's under-17 women's football team arrived home much to the relief of parents and well-wishers after being forced to evacuate Nicaragua following violent protests in that nation's capital last weekend. The players were all smiles when they landed at the LF Wade International Airport. Bermuda was scheduled to play in the CONCACAF Women's Under-17 Championship last Sunday against the United States when the protest over increased pension contributions for workers had intensified, leaving 10 people dead and over 100 nursing injuries. Earl Baisden of ZBM News has more.
It was only fitting that we, as a country, came down here to welcome our young ambassadors back home because, like the President said, for the last 3 days, we have been on eggshells. I know the parents and family have been on eggshells, and we, as a government, prayed and we looked to do whatever we could do to make sure that our girls got back home safely.
Team captain Denny Watson, having to take a minute to compose herself, said her and her teammates are looking forward to whenever the tournament resumes. But first, she said,
I really just want to thank everybody for supporting us in the couple of days we were in Nicaragua and the one game that we did get to play. Unfortunately, the tournament was suspended, but when they scheduled for it to be back up again, we're going to be ready because as soon as Monday comes, we're right back into training. And there's no breaks because we're ready, and we're ready to take on the rest of the competition that we had.
Trinidad and Tobago's senior women's football squad handed Suriname a 7-0 drubbing Wednesday night as action in the CFU Women's Challenge continued at the Otto Bolden Stadium in Couva. It was the Twin Island Republic's first match in the tournament, and head coach Jamal Shabazz gave his team credit for their good performance.
Well, I don't think it was a very strong Suriname team, though they gave a lot of room on the sides of the field, and we made use of it early in the game. But the worrisome thing is when we took off 3 of the veteran players, Tasha St. Louis, Karen Forbes, and Ayana Russell. I think we lost our way a bit, and this is a worrying thing, when we look at the depth that we're trying to create in the team. All in all, pleased that we scored 7 goals today, but far from making cartwheels and jumping for joy.
Shabazz says while he is happy with the results, he expected a much better showing from his opponents.
On the nerves, I think the ghost of 2014 is still, within the squad, especially the veteran players, because really, we've seen stronger Suriname teams, and I for one expected a lot more from them, and I thought that we could have gotten a couple more in the back of the net as well.
Meanwhile, the Lady Jaguars went into the CFU Women's Challenge with new coaching staff led by Dr. Ivan Joseph. The Guyanese, who resides in Canada, took up his duties as head coach earlier this month. President of the Guyana Football Federation, Wayne Ford, welcomed the new technical staff and said he hopes to see greater things coming from the senior women's squad. We get more in this report.
On Wednesday evening, the Lady Jags play their first match against Suriname. President of the GFF, Wayne Ford, traveled to the Twin Island on Tuesday along with the team, where he met with the newly appointed Lady Jaguars coach, Dr. Ivan Joseph. Mr. Ford said he was excited about this appointment and looks forward to working with Dr. Joseph.
We're very excited as an executive committee to have a brand new coaching team led by Dr. Ivan Joseph. I just met Dr. Joseph and we've had some good exchanges. I'm really excited about his thought process. He's taken a very broad view of the program and what are the key steps that we need to take in this rebuilding process. So I'm very optimistic about the future of the national Lady Jags team, and the executive committee. We're very committed to the program, and we now have a strong, vibrant international support group that is also committed. Yourself being here, so I think the future of Guyana female football program is exceptionally bright.
There has been an integration of players, both locally and internationally, to form the team. This, Mr. Ford said, augurs well for the team, since Guyana must at all times display the best 11 on the pitch.
And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again, festival again. The Caribbean's greatest summer line, yeah, it's country around the time. Party boy, yes, we here. I know you love it here. Troops and festivities, we love the Caribbean. The all night, no time to sleep. Emancipate with me.
Kick back, relax, enjoy the view, the boats, the scenery amidst epic parties, entertainment and nightlife. Antigua Sailing Week. Experience 7 days of non-stop bliss. Chase the race daily by land or up close by sea as the crews compete for glory. Then, when night falls, the harbor ignites. Antigua Sailing Week, April 28th to May 4th, 2018. Antigua and Barbuda. The beach is just the beginning.
Again, the major developments of this day, Barbadians finally informed that they will go to the polls to elect a new government on May 24th. And in sport, West Indies captain Jason Holder underscores the importance of the upcoming one-day series leading up to next year's World Cup in England. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, log on to CondaNews.com. We'll be back here again tomorrow, but from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching. Do have yourselves a good night.